everyone, and welcome to a new and hopefully improved Climate Queens. We are, you could say, evolving and have a very special online event for you today. We have temporarily re-emerged for a special video episode to celebrate this year's Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival, presented by Frontline Defenders and the Smashing Times. So if you remember, and if you've followed us, we have previously collaborated with Frontline Defenders and recorded our very first video episode for this festival this time last year. How time flies. So, when Frontline Defenders asked us if we would join them again this year, we just couldn't say no. So, this organization, in terms of Frontline Defenders, as well as the other incredible organizations involved in this festival, such as Fighting Words, Trócaire, Amnesty International, the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, the National Women's Council of Ireland, and Poetry Ireland are all doing fantastic work. So we are absolutely honoured to be part of this festival again.
I could not agree more. Thanks, Katie, for kicking us off. I hope the internet stays well. And we have loved using our platform that we have cultivated through our podcast and an online community as a knockoff, which has been great. And we will still continue to thrive and hope to elevate the voices of those fighting on the front lines and, those who are dedicating their lives to intersectional approaches, climate justice, climate action, all sorts of activism. And today is absolutely no different. So we are beyond thrilled to introduce you to some amazing climate activists whose work and dedication have inspired so many people around the world, really. And we think you guys will feel the same way once you get to know them as well. But before we do that, we do have some house rules, okay? Because I want you guys to hold me accountable personally. I don't know about you, Katie, but I keep saying climate change and I want to catch myself. We need to say climate crisis. We need to kind of get that into the normal psyche. So if you're watching, keep track of how many times I say it, okay? So I'm actually actively trying to change my vocabulary. So please hold me accountable. Okay, so back to today's hot topic. So even though we know scientists have been trying to warn us for decades about the disastrous effects of our warming planet, our planet is changing, it's still dividing opinion, and it creates huge polarities on the subject. So yes, this is a man-made problem, but the effects are not divided equally. And we really need to address this, and it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, threat facing our shared planet. And we are on a countdown to 2030. And I actually saw a really scary tweet yesterday.
I don't want to hear.
There are 99 months left to 2030. Isn't that terrifying? When you break it down to months, I was just like, oh no, it just still, I don't know, obviously with the lockdown and everything, I kind of felt like we lost a bit of time. So I'm still not, it's very hard to grasp. So that was really kind of bit of a kick up my arse again to be like, hey, check back in. We need to do some more. This is, the countdown isn't stopping. So yeah, feeling a little bit anxious today reading that online, but I'm hoping that this will create a lovely hub for people and some joy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, climate action may have seemed like a relatively niche concept to most, even just a few years ago. I think we'd all remember a time when you could be waiting months to see, even a factually correct article or story about, the climate crisis or environment in the news. And granted, the reporting is still far from perfect, but it has noticeably increased even alongside COVID, especially over the last, 6 months to 12 months, which is both terrifying and necessary all at once. I think it's terrifying because it makes it even more real, but it's necessary because it is absolutely a shared threat that we all face. Literally in the last 6 months, and this is me doing a very quick sweep of what we've experienced across the world in the last 6 months. We've seen record-breaking wildfires in California, devastating floods in China, equally horrendous floods across India, Bangladesh, and Nepal, severe drought across countries such as Brazil, Kenya, Pakistan, to name but a few. And we've also witnessed the publishing of the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their 6th assessment report, which is all to do with the climate crisis and climate systems. And in summary, for anyone who hasn't heard of it, essentially over 200 scientists from across the world issued a red alert, a red warning to humanity about the catastrophic effects that the climate crisis is going to have on our planet if we don't limit global warming and drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And that literally has happened in the last 6 months. So it's a lot to take in.
Absolutely. It's reminding me of that thing, Simpsons, when your man is like, don't push the red button. I'm like, yeah, like, just red alert. Like we need to get people interested. But obviously, it's fair to say the climate crisis is well and truly alive and kicking. And for those of us here, like in the west of the world, it is slowly becoming our reality too. And it will only become more prevalent. So obviously, every person needs to be involved in taking action, but even more so, like us who are actually creating the mass of the problem, you know what I mean? It's really even more so for us living in these areas, and we are really contributing to this problem. So many of us don't really realize how urgent this issue is. And for those of us that have come to understand the gravity of the situation, you can feel powerless, like really powerless, really paralyzed by it. And it can become quite polarizing and you kind of shut off. And you don't know what to do. You don't know who to turn to, where to start. So that's kind of a sticking point. And for those that have been obviously really engaged in taking action, obviously they can experience burnout, and that burden shouldn't be placed on the shoulders of the youth, essentially. That's just so unfair. So the responsibility lies with the producers, and we're not here to shame anybody with the whole carbon footprint thing. It's just a non-starter. It's greenwashing. Like it's no. We want to shift that responsibility away from people who, should not have to be worrying about, who are already struggling with the effects of the climate crisis on their doorstep as well. So what do you think, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all links back, like for us, making it kind of down to the individual to make kind of all of these positive choices. It can be a lot of pressure, a lot of there can be a huge burden. And for those of us who kind of feel that, that's where when we were brainstorming about what we could discuss for this event, we really wanted to provide something extremely useful for people, with really actionable things that people could take away with them and kind of incorporate into their climate activism. So with that, we thought, who better to get on board than the very people who are taking on this fight day in and day out. So I think that's enough of us talking.
Enough of us.
I think
you don't need us.
It's about time to start introducing the lovely faces that we have on the screen with us. People are probably like, and who are these? Come on. What's going on?
Get it going.
So today we are joined by Samia Dumbuya. Am I pronouncing that right? Was that okay? Okay, great. Samia is a climate justice activist focusing on empowering young activists to create impactful change in their communities by facilitating workshops, seminars, and talks, and by sharing tools and resources for youth activists to use to strengthen their campaigning skills. Then we also have Beth Doherty. Hi, Beth. Beth is an 18-year-old climate activist, and she has been an organizer with Fridays for Future since February 2019. And she works on education and empowerment alongside climate action. And she is currently studying law at the University of Cambridge, which I'm just going to say is badass.
That's pretty cool. And then we also have the lovely Dr. Jennifer Fennell, who's on our screen. And she's a counselling psychologist who has 5 years experience providing psychological support to individuals who are going through various emotional changes. And her particular therapeutic interests include the importance of self-compassion, meaning making in different circumstances, and the use of mindfulness as a therapeutic tool. And there is a 4th person who's not physically present with us today because of the nature of her work, and that's Uwe. So we were going to be joined by Uwe today, who is a very young human rights defender from China. But due to the nature of her work, she's unavailable. But we do have a pre-recorded clip that we will play for you later on. So we're still going to hear her voice and her experience with the frontline defenders, and tell us more about that later.
Yeah, so we basically asked, just to give everyone watching some context, we asked Samia and Beth and Uwe to take us through really their tools and advice for protecting the planet whilst also trying to protect themselves in the process. Then we also asked Dr. Jennifer Fennell to take us through a guided meditation at the end. So be sure to stick around for this experience, because I suppose what we are thinking is, it's so important to be present in our own, surroundings, and like finding gratitude in what we have, recharging. Because it's just, I feel like, we agreed on this, Clodagh, like it's so important in equipping people to, keep getting up, showing up, and making a difference for those that can't, and for those that don't have a choice about whether they engage in the climate crisis or not. Like we are in a privileged position that we make a choice every day to engage in this. There are people who don't have that option. It's literally on their doorstep right now. So yes, we'll be doing this meditation at the very end, so we can all leave feeling like floating butterflies and reconnected to ourselves and nature. So we might kick off with you, Samia. So firstly, hello, welcome. Yay. It's so great to have you. So you might take us through those kind of key things that we were talking about in terms of the tools that you tap into to basically keep going.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you guys for having me here. This is such an important discussion to have. And yeah, I think it's so important for us to share these tools and not just keep it to ourselves in order to make our movement sustainable and equitable as well. So firstly, before I get into everything, my name is Samia Dumbuya. I was born and raised in East London, specifically in Newham, if anyone's heard of it. And it's one of the most lowest socioeconomic areas in London. And because of that, I saw a lot of issues around the community where there was just a lot of environmental issues that weren't being addressed. So one of them that I kind of hooked onto was air pollution. And I saw that air pollution was harming people of all ages, and no one was really talking about it because people were from marginalized communities and people's voices were neglected. And I basically highlighted that Black and Brown communities are being negatively impacted by air pollution because of where they live and the environment that they live in. I used to live in between an airport and a sugar factory. So there was a lot of fumes going on, and no one really said, oh, hey, this is probably not the best place to place residential buildings in. And yeah, I was just thinking about it. I think I was 16, 17 at the time. I was like, oh, should I be concerned, or should I just accept this as a reality? Maybe it's not a big of a deal. And then I remember reports coming out saying 10,000 Londoners die a year from air pollution. I was like, oh, that's great. And no one's doing anything about it. So I remember me and my friends, we were talking, and everyone was just like, but Sam, there's bigger issues. We've got poverty on the rise here. We've got people who aren't going to universities, getting educated, people saying how, there's people that can't afford to pay their rent, their energy bills. And these were all standard issues that I cared about. But from my perspective, it was just we should not be having a discussion or a debate about whether we should have our air clean or not. I just feel like that's a basic necessity. And I was basically stuck in this echo chamber where I just felt like I was screaming at myself and no one was really listening. And I raised up this issue to people I met online and youth programs I joined. And some people say, oh yeah, that's really messed up. We want to do something about it. So I joined with 8 other people and we started Our Air, Our Health. And that was just basically to lobby a local council to do more to mitigate air pollution. And we worked with other groups and basically said, hey, let's work together as a collective, as a community, to get the council to listen to us. And what drove that movement was mums that had children were concerned about their children's health. And that was a great moment for me to realize oh, hey, we need to think creatively of who this affects. And also people don't want to learn that children are getting sick. You don't want to learn that a baby's getting sick. And that was a great hook to have, to get politicians to take this seriously. And through that journey, I was talking with people, and I ended up in Young Friends of the Earth Europe Network. And we talked about the importance of intersectionality and the importance of like highlighting discrimination within environmental issues. And through that, I remember just thinking like, this is a lot of information. I've just learned about the climate crisis and learned how the environment is degrading at a very fast rate. And that's having an effect on people's livelihoods and their well-being. And then on top of that, you're telling me this is linked with racism, classism, ableism, sexism, it's a lot. And I just remember like keep going and going and going. And I ended up burning out because I was just like, this is a lot of information to consume. I understand it all, and I understand the importance of every single issue and the relationships they have with each other. But then I was just like, no, I can't keep burning out every few months. This is not sustainable. And if I'm supposed to be a climate justice activist who cares about sustainability, surely I need to be sustainable myself, especially with my own well-being. And I remember talking with people. So, by the way, I'm going to say this a lot. I talk with a lot of people. I like to talk. Yes. I meet lots of people and I just keep talking. But through talking, you find out more information. So that's why I keep doing it. Yeah, so I ended up finding out that people were talking about climate resilience, climate anxiety. I know that's the buzzword you don't want us to use because but I heard people like using these terms. I was like, what is this? Like, I don't really get it. Surely this is just anxiety, but with like a climate eco lens. And then through talking with people, people were just basically telling me like, hey, I keep burning out and I don't know what to do. And in activist spaces, that's kind of normalized because it's like you're doing this for the greater good. So you kind of need to sacrifice yourself for the larger picture. And it's like, no, but we are the larger picture. We're trying to set an example of what we want our futures to be. So the way I protect myself from like the overwhelming feeling of the climate crisis is actually having check-ins with myself and ask myself like, hey, what strengths do you have that you can use in the movement? The reason why I asked that question is because I was the type of person who wanted to do everything. I was like, oh, I organize the march. I'll do the banner. I'll do this. I'll do that. Da, 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 da. And it's like, I just stretch myself out too thin. Yeah. And it's like, okay, what am I good at?
Wearing too many hats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, like, what am I good at? I like to talk to people and I like to connect with people and I like to teach people new information. I like connecting with people and making sure people feel heard and seen, making sure people feel safe as well. So I realized that I'm actually good at hosting workshops and facilitating workshops, making sure people have the space to express their feelings and thoughts. And through that journey, I realized that people actually are rarely given a chance to express their feelings and thoughts because they're usually kind of like pigeonholed to talking on Twitter, Instagram, and those platforms are very static. You're not having like a fluid conversation. And it kind of puts a barrier where you don't know the tone of other people. You don't know where they're coming from. So it kind of makes everyone tense and it kind of like exacerbates the issues that we're already facing because you have the whole world against you. And then now you're talking online and you feel like everyone's against you. And it's like, this is not healthy. Like, we need to stop this. We need to reevaluate the way we communicate about the climate crisis. And yeah, as I was having these thoughts and developing, I came across Katie Hodgetts. She started the Climate Resilience Project and she went through a similar thing. And she got some funding and started a project where basically the project happens across the UK. So it happens in Cardiff, Manchester, Bristol, Glasgow, and London. And basically, we as a collective decided to host workshops in the cities that we live in, just basically teaching climate activists like how to protect yourself whilst fighting against the climate crisis. Because as I said, activists, they love to keep going and going, but they don't make space for like having deep reflections, actually understanding why they're doing this fight, but also they don't actually make space for joy and having fun. You need to sustain yourself. Like, you can't always be on the defense and always fighting, because that is actually taken away from your humanity. And if you want to build a future that's about your humanity, you kind of need to lead by example and show what that actually looks like. And I know that can be hard depending on your circumstances, but that was one of the ways where I learned how to protect myself and others. And I feel like in turn that has a domino effect on protecting our environment. Yeah, like having these conversations, people feel more relaxed and they feel like they're effectively more productive in their fight for climate crisis. Because it's like, oh, if you know you're a painter, you'll just focus on like the creative skills that are needed for the movement. If you're someone who's really good at logistics and doing the paperwork and admin, not me, but if you are, like, focus on that, like help people be organized. Like that is what the movement is about, is there's space for everyone. And that's how we can protect ourselves, and which in turn protects the environment. But for like little things that I do locally is making sure that I take public transport, making sure that I find out sustainable alternatives that I have the resources or the capacity for. It's not always the case, but I like to see what's out there. And yeah, just like amplifying like all the cool environmental solutions that I see online and through conversations, like, oh, hey, this person's doing this, like, let's do it. Or like encourage them, amplify them. Because again, as activists, we feel like we have to reinvent the wheel, but there are people who are already doing that. And I think it's good if we amplify those who are already doing the work rather than replicating the work and then the impact is very low. So yeah, I've been in the climate movement since my late teens. I'm 25 now. And I feel like I'm just like a mother to like baby climate activists. I'm like, don't take the route I took. Like, you're going to burn out and you're going to lose faith in life. Like, this is the more sustainable path. Learn from my mistakes. And yeah, I'm still learning as I'm doing this. And recently through this journey, I've become qualified as a mental health first aid trainer. I've been trained by the Climate Psychology Alliance to do climate cafes, to get more young people talking about the climate crisis. And yeah, I'm taking the route of just like making sure people are taking care of their well-being, but also feeling equipped and brave enough to fight against structures that damage our well-being. And yeah, that's me.
I honestly think
Wow.
my head is going to fall off with the amount of nodding I was doing during that. I don't know if anyone, I was literally like, yes. But honestly, I feel like I've got so much to say. That was fantastic. Like, as so much of what you said resonated, like in terms of, well, firstly, what you were saying in terms of like, you know, I was in college there for 2 years and I found it's so disheartening to see the very people who are caring about this, you know, in floods of tears, you know, on a daily basis, you know, and you're like, these are the people who want to make a change and want to make a difference. And everyone was burning out, you know, and I love what you're saying in terms of making space for joy. And I feel like there's something really in that, that guilt of feeling like I can't enjoy myself. Like, we're literally in experiencing this like existential crisis. So I can't go and have, you know, a cup of coffee with my friends and just shoot the breeze. Like, I need to be, you know, figuring this shit out, you know. And I'm just, I just really appreciate what you're saying, and in terms of, you know, learn from your experience of having gone through that, of burning out several times and knowing that, you know, that's, yeah, it's just not sustainable. You're there promoting like this sustainable life beyond, you know, and you're like, but I can't, I'm not even looking after myself. So yeah, so much of what you said. And in terms of even just conversation, I think that's, personally, only speaking for myself, that's where I get those kind of goosebump feelings, is when you have those, you feel like you're getting through to people through conversation. So yeah, like, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I'm like, oh, we could just have another tangent here, but I'm conscious of time.
You're so right.
So thank you so much for sharing. And I do want to ask about what a climate cafe is after. So I'm going to switch it over to Beth, and I'm going to bookmark that in my brain to come back to. So thank you so much. So Beck, would you like to tell us who you are, what you do, what your aspirations are, the usual?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is going to be agreeing with you, Samia, to be fair. Like, I think everything you covered was absolutely spot on, in terms of like looking after yourself and kind of going into activism and things. And yeah, just in terms of me, I just turned 18. I just did my leaving cert there a couple of months ago, and I've just started university. And I got involved with climate activism when I was about 15. So that was organising the first climate strike in Dublin. And then from there, just mainly organising climate strikes, working with Fridays for Future at a European level and international level. And also doing some work around education with the Irish Second Level Students' Union, which like advocates for educational change in Ireland. And then working on the Supreme Court case, which brought, I'm sorry if you can hear my voice as well at the moment, which brought the Irish government to court last summer over our climate policy, and then led to an overhaul of that. So just kind of working on education and then also like mobilization of young people and change at a policy level. Yeah, over the last 3 years, which seems like forever ago now, when I was 15. So yeah, then in terms of kind of like protecting yourself, like protecting your environment, is kind of the general theme of this. So yeah, like I said, I got involved when I was 15, and it was actually my first ever protest was March 15th, 2019, which was very much kind of being thrown into the deep end. It was quite intimidating. And I think a lot of us at the time in Fridays Dublin, there's only about 5 of us organising the strikes with Fridays Future, obviously with other groups as well. And I think it was quite a stressful period, and it was quite overwhelming at times at the age of 15. And like we had one of my really close friends was 13 when she got involved. And that's something that really strikes me, is the age at which people are getting involved, which is obviously fantastic. And it's incredible that we're getting young people involved and making change, but it does have quite, not a detrimental impact, but quite a heavy impact on your mental health. So for instance, I went from TY, which is the year in Ireland here where you don't have much going on, into 5th year. And that was a really big transition for me in terms of balancing a bajillion commitments with my leaving cert and with school and things like that. And I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, because I think, as you touched on beforehand, it's kind of that feeling of, oh, well, I have to be working on this all the time, nothing else is as important. And particularly from speaking to kind of younger people, that feeling of like, oh, well, why would I be bothering with school? Why should I feel like I can enjoy this when, there's so much work to be done and we need to get all of this done? And that kind of pressure on, young people as young as 13 and all the way up until the final year of school, trying to balance all those different commitments. So something for me was definitely that level of kind of stress, kind of overwhelming, kind of feeling the need, as you touched on actually as well, to like take everything on and being like, okay, well, I need to be working on like every section of this, I need to be getting the stages, talking to the different organizations, talking to different people, getting them involved, like all of the things all of the time, which is not sustainable, and it's not okay. But I think there's sometimes a pressure, particularly when you first get involved, this feeling of, oh, I have to be doing everything, I have to be super involved with every project. And I think something really important to note, and the first kind of piece of, I don't know if it's like advice, but general things that come to mind, is being able to express your capacity. And I think, when I was 15, when I got involved, I didn't know what capacity meant. People would be like, oh, you need to express your capacity. I was like, what is that? But it's something that is really, really important in terms of recognizing, okay, I have X level of commitments, I have school, I'm doing this amount of subjects, I have these exams, or, I want to be able to see my family, spend time with friends, have a life, that kind of thing. And being able to express that and realize when you're full, because it's always kind of said, if you're burnt out, you're of no use to yourself, and you can't contribute to other things. Like, your welfare is the most important thing in you being able to conduct work in activism spaces. So a really important thing is recognizing where you're at with your capacity and expressing that to yourself. And there's a saying someone in one of our group chats uses all the time, which is like, expressing capacity is never selfish, and self-love is never being selfish. So like, if someone reacts negatively to you saying, I'm at capacity right now, I can't do that task, and here's someone else who might be able to do it, or can it wait, then that's not an okay reaction for them to have. And it is so important that you put your welfare first and you express your capacity, because ultimately that will allow you, firstly, to look after yourself and your own welfare, but also more effectively commit to the other things going on in your life. So it's really important to kind of note that capacity and communicate it to people. And we're actually going through a really interesting period in Fridays now, where we have lots of younger people joining, because a lot of us are now graduating and going into college and things, kind of bringing them onboarding them and things. And that's something we're really emphasizing to them, is do not feel like you have to do everything, work as a team, lean on each other for support. I think that leads into the second key thing here, which is leaning on other activists. I mean, I think that was touched on before as well, but like, communicating with others. Something like the climate crisis, as we all know, is a huge systemic issue. And when you look at a systemic issue, that is incredibly overwhelming, because to a certain extent, nothing I do as an individual is going to stop the climate crisis. Of course, you make the effort, but we know that systemic change is what's needed, to change completely in the way we structure our economy, in the way we structure our political system, in the way we interact with power in society. All of that needs to change. And particularly, when you're 16, 17, that's a bit overwhelming. That is a lot to take in. That's a lot to think about. And it can feel like very immobilizing in a way where you're kind of stuck in the sense of, oh, well, what can I do? Is there even anything I can do? And I think when that feeling sets in and when that feeling of hopelessness comes in, the best source of hope is leaning on each other and talking with other people and talking with other young people. And I think one moment that really stands out to me is the September 20th strike, which happened in late 2019. And for me personally, we'd actually had a summer where strike turnout was quite low, where I personally felt like we were losing a bit of momentum in Ireland at the time. And I went into that strike kind of, oh, well, I wonder how many people are going to turn up, if there's even going to be anything. And that strike ended up being the largest climate mobilization in history, which is obviously an incredible day. And we had 20,000 out in Dublin, which is the largest we'd had. And it was that feeling of seeing young people really coming together and seeing that, I remember we were walking across, if you're familiar with Dublin, we were walking across the quays and we could be heard on the other side of like the street, the other side of the city, pardon me, essentially. We could be heard from miles away. And I think that feeling of seeing young people really coming together and that power that people have collectively, and even if it's not something as large as that, things, seeing people in your community coming together and discussing the climate crisis, seeing people working together, seeing people realizing the status quo isn't okay, but then visualizing what the world should look like and having that kind of common vision can be really empowering and also help to kind of combat that sense of hopelessness and that sense of an inability to create change. So that's something I found quite useful, and also expressing that, if you are having a day where you feel like everything, where you're feeling it's hopeless and you can't achieve something, expressing that to activists, seeing maybe there's a new project or having conversations about that, because chances are the other young people you're working with have felt the same. So yeah, a really big thing is getting hope from the people you work with and discussing it with them and seeing young people coming together has really been a massive source of hope in terms of looking after myself and also kind of looking after each other as a community and kind of allowing each other to lean on each other. And if someone's struggling, sending that email for them or making them a cup of tea if it's at an in-person meeting, small things like that. And I suppose on a more personal level, I'm sure Jen will probably talk about this more, but I am a massive fan of like mindfulness and things like that, and kind of looking at areas like that to try and like make time for yourself. And just again, going back to the importance of expressing capacity and leaning on one another is kind of the two biggest things that I found useful in my time in activism from a personal welfare side of things. So yeah, that's pretty much everything.
That's amazing. I can't, like, you're talking about this capacity. Like, I have friends, like, we're in our 30s, and it's like, I have friends who don't even know that. They don't know what boundaries are. They don't know what any of this. So like, this is amazing. Like, this is exactly what we need to hear. People like need to learn to be like, it's okay to say no. If you've reached your max, you just like, it's totally fine. And I think normalizing that will like help, as you say, to like make it easier to like lean on someone and not feel like, oh God, I could never do that. It's like, or, put that pressure on someone. And that kind of reminds me of the thing where, people say it's not a no, it's just not now. And I really live by that. It's like, I will do it, but I'm actually just not today or whatever. So that's amazing. And on that, maybe we will pass on to Jen. Thank you so much, Katie. Have you any thoughts that you'd like to share on all these magical knowledge?
I mean, do you know what? I completely agree with you, Clodagh, in terms of like, yeah, capacity. Like, it's only in the last really kind of couple of years that I have felt confident to say no to people, because for me, I felt a sense of, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying shame, but kind of just like, well, I'm saying that I'm in this sphere and that I care a lot about it. So by me saying no, does that mean that I don't care? Like, you kind of have these conflicting thoughts in your head of what's the right thing to do. But I think it's just so important. And I love that idea of finding hope in by leaning on other people. I've definitely found that from even meeting you, Clodagh. Like, you introduced me to a whole amazing group of kind of activists. You're like, oh, stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah, but it's true,
Keep going.
Yeah. And you're amazing and you're so pretty.
So this is a love bubble.
But it is true. That's what I suppose has been so tough for so many people throughout COVID, is missing that human connection, and being able to meet and just get a buzz. Like, I remember like sure, we were at that strike in September 2019, and Clodagh and I came away from that absolutely just like, we're like, the energy, like, it was phenomenal. So yeah, I could keep going again. I'm just going to go on a tangent. So
is that the one we recorded?
Yeah, that's the one we recorded.
That March. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was electric. We had like kids singing chants and like, making up songs, and like, I just think that made it so lovely. And
yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna share screen. Okay, we can do this. Okay, here is Uwe, and this is 7 minutes long.
Hi everyone, my name is Oyi and I'm a climate activist from mainland China. I'm very nice to meet you here, and thank you for inviting me, Green Queen, and thank you for the frontline defenders from Ireland to help. So I'm a climate activist, I'm 18 and I'm a vegan, and also I so-called in China during the climate strike have these words from BBC or like New York Times. But here I want to say that I'm just myself. It is just a normal person who take this responsibility on their shoulders and wanting to help in the ways that they can. It's just that the way that every one of you can also take the lead. It is not a lonely or PC climate activists from China in these oppressive countries, like what is here on the wall here. So it is not good for the movement in China, because this can only create and emphasize the fear that the government wants people to have, and to regulate the people, which it is also what the governments want. And so we need to create this kind of media, to let people see how they can really act on the climate. And also from people live in Ireland or Europe should not have hard as saying that, oh, in China people are so petty that they cannot protest, etc. Because this is also not good for Chinese people to have their own confidence in starting a movement by themselves. When I first started the Fridays for Future movement in China, I have almost forced to leave home and to travel around China for 2.5 months and to sleep in everywhere as I can. I have slept in 24-hour bookshop, 24-hour restaurants or benches of university, and just on the streets. I have ate baozi. It is a convenient food that I buy from the convenience shop for that 2.5 months, and even ate leftovers to live my life. During the trip that I forced to travel, to drift it around China, I visited Greenpeace, WWF, and the Mangrove Protection Foundation, and the China Youth Climate Action Network, the largest Chinese youth climate action network in China. On this trip, I was rejected by entering the International Climate and Energy Summit that's organized by the China Youth Climate Action Network, largest climate action network in China that have cooperated with hundreds of schools and colleges in all over China. And I was taken by my parents from the Harvard summer school, that Harvard students came to China, came to Beijing to teach the most excellent Chinese high school students, just because I'm researching a project called how to use an appropriate way to develop the climate strike movement in China. As a climate activist, for the first 1 year, I constantly picking the time as the Global Climate Strike Day to join the protest. But this International Climate Strike Day isn't relative at all for internal Chinese political or any events. It usually was picked by European activists, Fridays for Future activists, that it is near election time or near an important conference time happening in Europe, so it's not related to Chinese people, and instead it creates some harm for Chinese movement, such as one climate activist in other continent created the Fridays for Future China accounts on Facebook for Fridays for Future China, and he posted the political events that Chinese majority don't like, and it's, for example, the Hong Kong protest, and it is not directly related to the climate issue. It is caused a very big backlash for the Fridays for Future China movement. And another aspect is that Chinese activists want to align their principles with the Fridays for Future international movement, and it makes the coordinating and organizing very hard, because for a very small group it is not applicable for this small group in China using the same way as organizing or principles as a very big group that needs a lot of coordinating in happening Fridays for Future Europe. So for a long time, Chinese movement, it is very static, and the group remain very small, and the work are very spontaneous. It led me to sacrifice almost all my education. I haven't gone to school for 2 years, and to try very hard. For most of the times, I strike every Friday, and for most of the time on the weekdays, I stay at home myself, and I check messages with activists abroad, try to learn from their experience. But actually, it doesn't help at all, because I spend too much time in explaining to them what's happening in China, and explaining to different people, different activists. And I didn't spend much time in organizing with local people, which is a very big pity, because for movement in China, the organizing with local people is the best suitable way to grow the movement. Yeah, and so starting last December, I started to reflect, and I reflected that this movement started by Greta, although it is great, but it is definitely not enough. we need a better organizing, and we need a much greater leadership. And currently, I didn't see in the global movement, and I didn't see that in China's movement. But what I know is that to create our own media, create our own narrative, and use applicable way to grow the movements locally is the best way. We can compare several countries to gradually know the movements in UK before they can go to do the free the press actions by Extinction Rebellion in June 2021. Their art factory is being raided, and in the June 2019 Élysée Palace occupation in Paris, it is also raided. It is also suppressed by the police a lot, and there are over 200 people being evicted, and they were being followed by one day. So in China, our action in 25th of September 2020 also being followed by the police for one day, and also being say in the jail for interview for 2 or 5 hours. So it is quite similar response, and I find many similarities in the movements that we're being suppressed and the resilience of the people. We find ways to get through with it. For example, the movement in UK, even the organization that's creating hundreds of arrests in highways of obstructing the highway, they use WhatsApp. It is although it is called end-to-end encrypted, under the enforcement of the UK government, they use this for daily usage. Although it was not like obvious that it was being monitored, but of course they MI5 and MI6 have the ways to get through with it. So as in China, the WeChat, it is obviously because they show the scripts of our chatting message on interviews to activists, so we know that they get this information. But for more information, for hacking of phones, we don't know. But we probably know that National Security Bureau, of course, have a way to get the information if they want. So for daily usage, they also use WhatsApp, and only before very small actions and dangerous actions, or like the core team organizing a mass hundreds of people arrest, then they will shift to more secure applications, or they will have backup teams to prepare. So they find groups and groups of people to continue to take up the space and to be the person who sacrifice themselves. So to overprotect ourselves and over scare about the suppression isn't a way. So from these practices, I see people's resilience and the similarities of suppressed in countries around the world. So this is a small sharing of today, and I know it is been a long time that I haven't appeared on the camera, but I hope all of you it is good, and see you.
Wow. How do you guys feel after watching that? I hadn't watched that before. Like, it's such a different experience, and yes, so that you can understand why Rhea isn't with us today, due to like where she is and what she's doing. But like, yes, definitely great to get her voice and her experience. So she's working with protection officers with frontline defenders who are part of the Human Rights Festival. So that was the link with Iwi. And yeah, it's just, there are people like her going around. You know, I can't believe that, like, she's not been in school now for how long, and we don't know where she is. That's
and the fact that like it just generally like their contact has to be monitored, you know, general things that like they have to get permission to come on to things like this, and like that's the reality for so many people, and it just really brings it home, speaking from my own experience of just like, just the level of, I suppose for me, just like the privilege that I have in being able to just turn up like this and chat away, and it doesn't really matter what I say, you know, but this is her lived experience, this is what she's going through. So yeah, it was amazing that she even sent through that video. I think even as she said that in the video, you know, it's been a while since I've like shown my face like this. So but we did have a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago, and she was so grateful for this kind of opportunity to speak about her experience, and she was very gracious. So it's great to have had her on board for sure. But yeah, I suppose before we kind of wrap up with this kind of mindfulness piece, I wanted to ask Samia and Beth a quick question, just in terms of because there's, I think for everyone, there's that kind of, you know, what is that person or saying or quote or book or motivation that you come back to time and time again, that kind of resets you and gives you that, I suppose, that recharge to know why you're doing what you're doing. Like, do you have one thing, or is it just like a feeling, a knowing? I'd love to, yeah, if you could share that with us. Like, is there something that just gives you that burst that you just need to think about it and you're like, yes, thank you, I needed that, I'm ready to go again? Samia, do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the Nap Ministry, which is like an account I think you can find on Twitter, maybe Instagram. And the whole aim is like to teach people to like rest and not like constantly think about productivity. And it's like seeing rest as a radical action, like reclaiming our humanity back, because most of us activists were trying to take down and dismantle oppressive structures, but also capitalistic structures as well. And capitalism teaches us to like keep going and going as if we're machines. And it's like, no, as a human, you deserve access to resting and joy, and not just do those things in terms of like, oh, I need to rest so that I can be like 100% sharp next week. It's more like rest because you want to, and like, you don't need to over explain yourself on why you deserve relaxation and joy. Like, just do it. And even though it sounds so simple, it's quite interesting how like people react badly to those messages, because it's like, oh no, but that's not how the world works. Like, everyone needs to be doing something and everything. And it's like, oh, we value ourselves based on our productivity. And that's something we actually need to move away from if we actually do want to create a world that's sustainable and equitable. But I could have a huge rant about this. I'm going to stop there.
No, I very much agree with that. I support this message very badly.
I support this message.
See, we're like, it's like we're on a news show. We're approving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great message for people to take away. Beth, what about yourself? Is there something that you come back to time and time again that gives you that recharge or motivation to kind of go again?
I think for me, it's always just kind of like having a chat with my friends. And sometimes that's like my friends from Climate who kind of would be like, oh yeah, like I felt the same. Or sometimes it's my friends who like are not involved in activism whatsoever, who are just like, oh, sounds rough, want to go for a cup of tea. And I think like knowing who you can go to in your life in those kind of areas. And also again, just like taking time to be by yourself if that's something that works for you, and kind of like taking time to figure out what, you know, works best for your kind of style. Because obviously what works for me might not work for you, what works for you might not work for me. So just like taking time to kind of figure it out and giving yourself that space. Like you were kind of touching on there, like to not like feel like you have to be doing something all the time. Like it's okay to not be productive and just kind of chill and just exist.
Just be.
Guys, I just want to go and sit on the couch and just drink a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Because we should be allowed to do that.
Absolutely. So if you're watching this now, this is your message. This is the sign, not the sign or your sign. This is the sign to go relax, take a minute. You deserve it. Okay. This is the resounding message from the last 40 odd minutes. Also, I actually just going to add in my tidbit there, was the Active Hope book that my friend introduced me to. And we did the Active Hope workshop. And it was the first time that like someone vocalized that like it is okay to just exist, as Samia said, like just to be. And that really stuck with me. So like you could look that up. It's a book, it's a whole workshop, and people are doing other workshops on it as well. But I mean, rest and revive yourself. And on that note, do you want to introduce Jen, Katie?
Yes, well, I mean, I don't think she needs much of an introduction. I mean, we have explained her background. She also just happens to be my best pal, so that works out great. I have a counselling psychologist living with me, which is phenomenal. But yes, Jen, I'm going to put this on because we figured that when you're taking us through this mindfulness, people who are watching this would only see our faces with our eyes closed. So now we've got, this is just the message. I think this actually totally sums up, we preempted this like our message for today, which is take time to relax, and that you don't need to explain yourself. So Jen, over to you, my friend.
Thank you. And I know my internet's a bit patchy, so just give me a wave if there's any issues or if I drop off. So thanks, speakers, for the really it was really informative and some great tips there on boundaries and self-care and everything, which will hopefully tie into what I'll take you all through. I won't talk too much about mindfulness. I think people might know a lot already about it, but I suppose this kind of whole evening has been looking at self-care, and self-compassion is a huge part of self-care, and mindfulness and self-compassion pretty much go hand in hand. So I'm hoping to take you through a kind of a mindful meditation with a focus on self-compassion, and then just to say as well, the benefits of mindfulness really are from doing it regularly. So obviously it's great to do a nice relaxing meditation or some deep breaths when we're feeling a bit anxious or stressed or whatever it might be, but for the real benefit, it is to try and do it every day, make it a bit of a routine, a habit, even just a few minutes a day. That's easier said than done, when people have busy lives, but I try to think of it as like, brushing your teeth or, having your breakfast in the morning, where we kind of just do that automatically. And if we think about, mindfulness or any kind of even just relaxation practice, it doesn't have to be too intense. The benefits really come in. And hopefully what I'm going to go through with you now will be something you can maybe take away and try to incorporate yourself day to day or whenever you get the chance. So I'll kick us off. So just to kind of settle in, I invite you to just, to try and sit as comfortably in your chair as possible. I recommend, feet on the ground, and feel supported by your chair. So, it doesn't need to be this upright posture, have your back supported by the chair and make any movements that you need to feel supported. So can you make yourself 10% more relaxed in the chair? So put your hands wherever feels comfortable for you. And again, I'd encourage you to have your feet grounded and in contact with the floor if you can. I invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. If not, maybe just cast your gaze down or have kind of a soft gaze on something. I'm going to take a few breaths together to kind of settle in to this posture and into our bodies. So no need to control or alter the breath in any way, just some breaths in and out through the nose and maybe into the belly. So I like to put my hands on my belly and just send a few breaths to my hand in and out through the nose. So I'll invite you to do this a couple of times. And so hopefully we're feeling kind of settled now. And what I invite you to do is to look inwards and see what your weather pattern is at the moment. So this might be feeling a bit unsettled. It might be a bit stormy, there might be rain, or it might be sunny. It might be really calm. There might be a nice breeze. There might be crazy hail, thunder and lightning, or maybe it's really changeable. Maybe it's going from one to the other. Just what your internal weather pattern is right now. And know that whatever it is okay. And that our emotions, our feelings are like the weather, they come and go, they change. Good and bad days, ups and downs, and whatever it is right now is absolutely okay. So just take a moment without judgment to notice your internal weather pattern. And I invite you now to go through a short body scan. I'll guide you through this now. So again, focusing on our feet, which are hopefully really grounded at the moment. So start at our feet. Just notice where your feet is making contact with the floor beneath you. Maybe even imagine that they're really grounded, like, you know, roots of a tree grounding into the earth below. Notice any sensations that might be present in your feet, any tingling, any discomfort, and again, know that this is okay. And we'll work our way up our bodies. So maybe just noticing and bringing to your mind's eye your shins and your knees. Noticing your calf muscles and how they feel at this time. Noticing the fronts of your legs, your thighs. Maybe your hands are in contact with your thighs. Noticing the back of your legs and maybe where they're making contact with the chair. Just notice again, are you comfortable in the chair? Do you need to shift anything to get a bit more comfortable? Notice your pelvis. Again, the areas that are in contact with your chair. Notice how your pelvis feels at this moment. And bring your awareness to your lower back. Again, there might be an area that's in contact with the chair. Bring your awareness up to your middle back and then your upper back and shoulder area. And this is an area where we can hold a lot of tension and stress, particularly if we're hunched over all day or if we're feeling stressed. But just notice how this area feels, your shoulders, your neck, your upper back. Is there any tension, any discomfort? And again, remind yourself that this is okay if that's the case. You know, we're looking at all of this with a non-judgmental lens. So just be aware of how you're feeling. Now come to the belly, the stomach area. Again, notice, is there any tightness or tension there? Work your way up the front of the body and your chest. And notice your arms, your upper arms. Notice how your forearms and your hands feel. Maybe your hands are rested gently in your lap, or maybe they're by your side. And again, if you notice any sensations in any part of your body, just notice this without judgment. Bring your awareness now back up to your neck, up to your jaw. Is there any tightness or tension, any clenching of the jaw? Up to your lips and your nose and your cheeks. Bring your awareness up to your eyes and eyebrows. Imagine the area around the eyes softening. Bring your awareness up to your forehead. Again, is there any tension? And now up to the crown of the head. How does the top of your head feel? And I invite you now to notice your body as a whole as it's sitting in the chair. Are there any parts that are really screaming out to you in terms of any pain or discomfort? Or maybe your body feels relaxed, maybe your muscles feel relaxed. And again, knowing that however you feel at this moment in time is okay. And I invite you now to return to your internal weather pattern. Maybe it's changed from what you thought earlier. Maybe it's a bit more settled, or maybe not. Maybe it's more turbulent. Maybe it's more stormy, or maybe your internal weather has stayed the same. And again, whatever has happened, know that it's okay. And just like the weather, our emotions and our feelings come and go and are constantly changing. And just to finish this off, I invite you to place one hand or both hands on your heart, and to just notice how that feels for a moment. And to just imagine the energy traveling from your hand to your heart. Imagine a warm orange glow emanating from your hand, traveling to your heart. And imagine that this glow, this energy is sending the message that it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then maybe imagine in your mind's eye, your heart is giving out extra love. Imagine your heart is enlarged and is sending out more love to the world around you, the planet, the environment, the people around you, and to yourself as well. And maybe just hold your hand over your heart and imagine that communication between your hand and your heart happening for a few moments. Okay, and whenever you are ready, I invite you to bring your awareness back into the room that you're in, and to, open your eyes if they were closed. Take all the time you need. And that's it. So thank you for doing that with me.
I'm very relaxed. Thank you. Are people asleep?
That was the aim.
That was fantastic. And unfortunately, Jen, now that you've shared that with me, I'm going to be asking you for that at least once a week. No, I absolutely love that. And I love as well, I feel like another kind of message that's coming from this chat is that it's okay. Like, it's okay to feel not okay, and just to not be so hard on ourselves, and to remove that judgment, because I think especially those of us who care, like really care, there is I find a lot of judgment is more so on myself than anybody else, that I have to do more and I should do more. But I think, yeah, that was really nice. I really, really liked that.
Yeah. I'm going to take it on the high of, like, if your brain is your bad, I call it my bad brain. If your bad brain's doing that thing, it's like, would you talk to your friend like this? I'm like, no. So why am I? So, like, that's definitely the, treat each other kindly. Oh, I want to have a nice little floaty cloud sleep now.
Well, at one point, Clodagh, I saw you kind of like go back into the background. I was
Did you see me? Oh no!
I was like, Clodagh's so relaxed, she's disappeared.
Oh, I thought I turned it off. Great.
Oh God. Yeah, at one point I opened my eyes, I was like, is this what I look like when I sleep? But like, this is not a good look.
Anyway. We want to thank you guys so much. I've forgotten everything we're going to say now. I'm too relaxed. My focus is gone.
Yeah. Well, yeah, basically we're saying just a massive thank you to, all of you for joining us, for taking the time to watch this, and we hope you get something from it. A huge thank you to our guests, Samia, Beth, Uwe and Jen, of course, for taking the time to speak with us, really giving us your energy and your insight and sharing, your stories and advice. I think there's so much from what you've said. There was a lot of overlap, which is even more reassuring that, generally there's a message there to kind of take the time that you need, just don't judge yourself so harshly. And of course, anything that's been mentioned, we'll make sure to include in kind of below in the YouTube video and links, and tag these incredible people who have joined us, so you can follow them online. And of course, don't forget to check out the other events happening online and in person for the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival. It only started yesterday.
Great.
So there are lots of really great events to check out. And you can also follow Smashing Times and Frontline Defenders on Twitter at smashing_times.
Oh, you nearly had it. You nearly had it.
And also at Frontline HRD. And then you can, of course, follow us at Climate Queens Podcast on Instagram and catch up on our 2 seasons, really everywhere that you get your podcasts.
Yeah, well, we mightn't be on Instagram anymore now after everything that's happened this month, but listen, that's
we'll find a way of keeping in touch with everyone.
Exactly.
Yes.
And thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you obviously to our guests. I'm feeling super floaty and dreamy, and I know this was like aimed for people who are in the climate movement, who might be experiencing, as we said, we didn't want to use the word like anxiety, because I think people are just kind of sometimes throwing that word away, and it's actually just really important to address it. But maybe if you are watching this, you could show this to your friend who is not in the climate movement, and to be like, here's what people are experiencing. Burnout is obviously real in every facet of your life, but that this is especially prevalent to those who are engaged in the movement. So kind of maybe a bit of sharing, I think, would be nice. So yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
And scene.
Yeah.